So the Arizona Cardinals get ready to take on the Carolina Panthers. Lauren went through the lengthy injury report in the 4 o'clock reset. We only have 42 minutes left in the show, so we're not going to do it again because it would take about that long.
It was a long list.
It's long. We'll know a lot more tomorrow. Jonathan Gannon will meet with the media in the morning, and usually by the time we're on the air for Burns and Gambo, we've got kind of the final list in terms of, who's in, who's out, who are game time decisions, things like that. There were a lot of names on the list, and so there's a little bit of concern of that going into this Carolina game, which obviously is must win. Carolina, I know it's on the road, and I know it's against a team that the Cardinals have not historically fared well against, but man, their defense is just... We had the Carolina Panthers beat writer on from ESPN. He's like, look, I have James Conner in my fantasy league. I'm very happy that I've got James Conner in my fantasy league. It was funny because he's like, this Carolina defense is atrocious. There are, Jody, you do a lot of work in and around the Cardinals and a lot of broadcasting for them on their pre and post game shows. There really are, I think, if we're going to do the 30,000 foot view thing of the Cardinals and really look at this season as a whole up until this point, I really think there are two schools of thought, and both of them I think can be true at the same time. It's like a good news, bad news. The good news, and Howard Balzer pointed this out at cardswire.com in a story that I read this morning. The good news is that the Arizona Cardinals have a long-term plan to build the organization, and they would appear to be on the right path when it comes to that.
Yeah,
young players, relying on young players. I think it was first or second year players for the Cardinals played like 38% of the snaps against the New England Patriots. That's great. They're getting huge, valuable experience in must-win situations, and that's awesome. And the Cardinals have won games relying on young players. They're one of only a handful of teams that have improved their win total by 3 or more wins from this time a year ago. So they're doing great in that regard. The bad side is, the bad news is that of all the teams over the last 5 weeks, of all the teams who have seen their playoff chances go down the most, only the Atlanta Falcons have taken a bigger hit than the Cardinals have. The Cardinals have seen like 50 percentage points off of their odds just get sliced right off because of how they've played the last 5 weeks of the season. So both of these things can be true. Both of these things are obviously a part of our life, but it is tough. At one point you want to look at it and go, hey man, the plan's proceeding great. Awesome. And on the other hand, you want to go, yeah, but they were like this close, right? And they're still there, but they're going to need so much help to get there that it's hard to know which one is the stronger feeling about the Cardinals this season.
Yeah, and to me, it's funny because it's hard to not. So first of all, it's not really about the correlation; it's more about the goal. And I think when you mention the Falcons, and of course, we know the story that the highly paid Kirk Cousins acquisition, he's been benched for Michael Penix, and it's simply been turnovers, really. I mean, and really when you think about the struggles for the Cardinals, that's also been a part of why they lost those 3 games in a row. And it's the Seattle Seahawks. I don't know who the Falcons played during their stretch of Kirk Cousins struggling, but I'm not saying it comes all down to the quarterback here, but I will say that for the Cardinals, I looked at that stretch coming out of the bye as very important. You could see it. Anyone could see that was going to be really important, right? Because you came off the Bears and the Jets, 2 teams that had struggled.
Yep.
And we know, again, it's hard to ignore the record. Like the Patriots, they came in with 3 wins. The Carolina Panthers, they have 3 wins. This stretch in the middle with the 3, they were better teams. And I would argue they played best against the Vikings, who had the better record.
Oh, no question.
But they had so much trouble on both sides of the ball with particular matchups with the Seahawks. Yeah. And that to me is why they have taken this hit. And oh, by the way, I think that, less was expected of this Cardinals group. Like if you asked people nationally, would you even have thought them, or locally too, 6-4, certainly not playing with house money, so to speak, because by that time, then you say, okay, we have a chance here. The 49ers are down.
Yeah, totally.
And the 49ers being down plays into this too.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, yes, you're still trying to develop young players. And, and if I could so I'm adding all of these little qualifiers. And another one is, let's take the D-line, for example. They signed Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones. Those two guys have barely played because they were injured right out of the gate. And so you did have certain signings that were in key areas where you wanted guys. And then I would say the secondary is the opposite, where that was the one area where preseason I thought, how much is this going to come back to bite you that you don't have a lot of experience there? Yes, you signed Sean Murphy-Bunting, but you've got, Garrett Williams is young. You could see the talent, though. You could
Max
see
Melton
this guy.
is young. Star
Max
Thomas
Melton's
is young. Right,
Rabbit, Rabbit is playing some when Jalen Thompson was out, but now Jalen's back. And so, but that area now is seemingly a strength
I think
because
it is a strength.
These young players are pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, are they perfect? No. Are they still making a mistake here and there? Yeah, but they're getting a lot. And Star Thomas, who's, not a rookie, but, and then, you've had to, and then on offense, you've had, Marvin Harrison Jr., to a lesser extent, Trey Benson, who's, I guess, a little banged up right now. But yeah, I mean, it's actually whether you want to call it a rebuild or not, it's going according to plan because some of these young guys have shown that they can be trusted to be a part of this future. But really the veterans, and even you look at what happened the last few weeks, it's been Connor getting re-signed, Buddha getting re-signed. You have Froholt that's on board. So you have key veterans in this mix too.
Yeah, look, nobody wants to hear wait until next year, especially when you're playing this big game against Carolina and you know that if you win it, and that you're setting yourself up for an incredibly huge showdown against the Rams the next week. The Cardinals, I know what the playoff odds say. They're still very viable to get to the postseason. So I'm not giving up on this season necessarily. I'm not saying it can't happen this season, but I do think a marriage of these two things, these two kind of conflicting ideas. Hey, a very young team and the rebuild is on the right path, and versus a team that was 6-4 and looked like they were kind of in control and it's kind of fallen apart. Which one is the more? I think if you marry the two together, what it does tell you is that next year has to be the year. And if it doesn't happen next year, something went very, very wrong. All right. And that to me is the middle ground between these two ideas. If you want to say, hey, good news, the Arizona Cardinals are getting great contributions from their young guys, and they're right on schedule. Awesome. You can believe that. If you want to say, hey, you know what? Bad news. They were 6-4. Now they've got an 8% chance of making the playoffs. What the hell went wrong? Fine. Feel that way. Either way, you're right. Either way, you are correct. But where it all comes to a head is next year.
And so you're saying they've got to make the playoffs.
It is an absolute failure if they do not make the postseason. I would even argue that winning the West next year if they don't do that might be a failure. It's got to happen next year. It's got to, and if it doesn't, something went wrong. Something went really, because now you're into that level of expectations, and now you're into that level of these young guys aren't young guys anymore. They've kind of been through it. They know what to expect in December football. That to me is where you say, if you're going to give them a pass this year, and if you want to do that, that's cool. There's no passes next year. There's no freebies next year. It's year 3 of a rebuild. It is time. And if it doesn't happen next year, that's what makes me a little nervous.
That's interesting. Yeah, because it's not easy. It's a tough division. The 49ers will probably, I don't know. We all know about their injuries. We don't know where they'll be. And then you got to stave off key injuries yourself. So
yeah, if you're going to go,
I hate to be the Debbie Downer here.
No, it's fine. I think there's a lot to like. There really is. There's a lot to be positive about what the Arizona Cardinals are doing. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer either about this team. I'm just saying that next year you can't use the excuse of, well, we're young and we're rebuilding and we're on this trajectory. And that doesn't fly next year. I don't think any of that.
Yeah, because all these guys have experience, which is true.
Yeah,
true.
And you're certainly next year going to have to be better when the calendar gets late, because that's been kind of an issue this year too. So lots of kind of unpack there.
Thanks for watching Burns and Gambo. Click to see more from the guys and hit the button in the middle to subscribe so you never miss a video from Arizona sports.